welcome to episode 4 of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt.
It's a cool 114 degrees out today in Lincoln. How's everyone beating the heat?
Staying inside because enjoying some air conditioning. I went out and saw a couple of my friends over this weekend, but even that was hot. Besides that and going to the gym, I am not stepping foot outside in this inferno, so I'm happy to stay indoors.
Yeah, Matt, what about you?
I think the Telegraph office is a cool 70 degrees right now, so I'm very comfortable.
All right. I'd hate to see that AC bill, though, at the end of the month. Yeah, I'm coming from my house in Lincoln. We're keeping it pretty cool, but I think we have like 4 or 5 of those like Costco floor fans that are just running constantly. I mean, we're just so it's like a small tornado. When we go to sleep at night, it sounds like a jet engine taking off. But we have had an eventful weekend of football. I know college football kicked off this weekend. We had some great games. We also had some great high school games around the area. Matt, you kind of started us out with one of the most exciting games of the weekend in Vista and Placer. You picked an upset in that, and you had some of us talking. I mean, we thought you might have known something we didn't at halftime. Kind of talk a little bit about that game.
Yeah, it was probably, I picked Vista to win, but it was still probably closer than people would have thought anyway, prediction aside. But, it was, Carter Jackson and Granite Bay's running game against Vista's passing game. So, Granite Bay, Carter ran the ball, 41 times or 39 times or something. I mean, he was a workhorse, and why not? Vista couldn't stop him, so give him the ball. And most of his runs are between the tackles. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he runs hard and he doesn't mind taking it inside. So he's a tough runner, tough to bring down. And then when he gets outside, he's got that that speed, the sprinter speed. So he's a tough running back, and he gave Vista fits. And on the other side, Granite Bay had trouble covering Vista receivers Matt Long and Cruz Santero, and they both had well over 150 yards receiving from Johnny Kett. So it was, classic Vista pass versus Granite Bay run, and made for an exciting game. Vista led 23-22 at the half, and they went into the game without their starting center, Brandon Nazareth, who is also their biggest player physically, like 6'4", 260. So they were really outmanned. Granite Bay was much bigger than them, and I really worried in the second half that Granite Bay would, wear them down. But maybe they did a little bit. But Vista, they showed me something. They were the smaller team, and they hung in there as long as they could. The difference in the game, they had 2 turnovers in the second half, and they also had 2 plays where it was like 4th and 5, and they only got 4 yards. And one of those plays might have been in the first half. I don't remember, but I know they had 2 of them throughout the game where they went for it on 4th and 5, and they literally came up a yard short. And I think on both those plays, the guy with the ball ran out of bounds, and Lambs is saying, we got to put our shoulder down and get that extra yard, when we need it. We can't just be playing soft like that. So again, it's another learning point for the Eagles, and they're not going anywhere. They'll be back. They like playing these tough games. After the game, they weren't, you expected, they were disappointed they lost, yes, but the locker room was pretty positive. They were happy with how they played, and they got another big game this week with Placer. So they like playing tough opponents. This team seems to like, and they rise to the occasion. So, it was just a very exciting game and a good game for both sides.
Yeah, I talked to Placer head coach Joey Montoya yesterday. He kind of previewed that a little bit, and I know we'll talk more, but he said one thing about Vista. So he goes, don't let that 1-2 record fool you. Their 2 losses are against 2 of the best teams in the section, Manteca and Granite Bay. Manteca, it was week 1, but Granite Bay, they went in there, they stood toe-to-toe with them. They could have just as easily come out with a win in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Friday night, Aaron, were you going to say something?
No, you're good.
All right, cool. Well, Friday night, your game was not as close, Matt. Kind of talk to me about what you saw from Folsom when they played Edison.
Yeah, it was, myself included, but I'm sure there's others. They knew Edison wasn't as good as Sarah, but people wanted to see how Folsom was going to rebound after a 17-12 loss, and they came back and they were fine. They won 65-0, so the game was never in doubt, never close. The defense scored 4 times for them in the first half on 2 interception returns, a fumble recovery, and a safety. So the defense did their part, not only stopping Edison, but putting points up on the board. And Folsom's offense was clicking. Austin Mack, quarterback, 17 out of 21 for 263 and 4. And Austin Norberg, who's replacing the Walker Lions, 6 catches, 77 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, it was just Folsom still hasn't come out and performed, but they did that, and they rebounded from a loss, and they played well.
All right, awesome. Aaron, you were a busy man this weekend too. You hit a few games. Kind of talk to me about what you saw from your games.
Yeah. So Friday night, I was over at Lincoln. I was announcing that game, and it's been funny. I've kind of played opposite man these last couple of weeks because I picked Yuba City last week to win 28-21 against Lincoln, and Lincoln won 28-27. And then this last week I picked Lincoln 30-21, and Castle won 29-21. So maybe going forward, just pick the opposites team that I think is going to win, and maybe I'll get it right. But as far as the game, Cole Owens of Vista, or Cole Owens of Castle Roble, played an insane game. He was all over the place, especially in the first half. He caught a 65-yard touchdown to get things going from sophomore quarterback Connor Campbell. Ryan Henning of Lincoln responded back and got a touchdown, so it was 7-7. Owens on the ensuing kickoff returns at 98 yards for a touchdown. And then Lincoln ends the first quarter with a Thomas Mukai connection to Hayden Dotson for 46 yards. So very explosive first quarter. Second quarter wasn't the same. There was no scores in the second quarter, even though Lincoln was able to recover a fumble, force a turnover on downs, and get another turnover on downs off of a sack. They just weren't able to take advantage of that. And then in the third quarter, they actually got off to a pretty good start as well. They got an interception. Kyle Klein got the interception, and Lincoln took advantage with a 36-yard touchdown from Mukai to Isaac Gomez, who had 2 touchdowns last week. But from there, it was all downhill, and it pretty much just came down to poor offensive and defensive line play and their failure to stop the run of Josh Taylor. Something I found interesting too, when I was actually doing some research on the CASA team after the game, they have at least 2 guys, but maybe 3 that actually played on the Granite Bay rugby team that won the national championship back in the spring. So, as far as tackling is concerned, speed, that obviously plays a factor as well. But the Rams took the lead late in the third quarter. They got a 2-point conversion after the Zebras had a penalty on the extra point attempt. And then they scored to start off the fourth quarter. And for Lincoln, it was just punt in the third quarter. Fourth quarter, they throw 2 interceptions. The one that basically did them in with 7 minutes to go, Mukai around the 30-yard line or so, passes it almost 20-yard completion to midfield to Gianni Faria. It actually looked like he had the ball, but it was actually taken out of his hands and intercepted by Elijah Huddle. And that basically did the Zebras in. Even though they did get the ball back, they threw another interception. Lincoln's just got to, their offensive line's got to give Mukai more time to pass. I know that teams are really focusing on Ryan Henning right now and trying to stop the run and stack in the box. But I think they got to try to find a way to get him involved with the game. He only had 3 carries in the second half, and a player of his caliber needs to get the ball more than that. And like I said, they just need to be stronger when it comes to their offensive and defensive line. And it's not going to be any easier this week when it comes to facing a very tough run offense team in Roseville. So they're going to have to get everything together. That was Friday. And then Saturday, I decided I wanted to go check out a small school game. I didn't get a chance to go watch Valley Christian Academy last season. And so I wanted to go see if they could go 3-0 against Johnson. And that didn't happen. One thing I will say is I know, Valley Christian's a D7 school. They only had 16 guys in pads. So you could definitely see the fatigue play a role in that game as it kind of went along. They got off to a decent start, even though they gave up a touchdown on the opening play. They responded back, and Matthew Larson connected with Chris Donker for a 35-yard touchdown, and they got the 2-point conversion. So they were up 8-6. They also got an interception in the end zone, Roderickson Williams. But from there, it was all downhill, and Johnson scored 40 unanswered points from the end of the first quarter until about midway through the third. Valley Christian did get 2 touchdowns to Roderickson Williams and Justin Perry, but they just didn't have a chance in this one. They lost 62-22. One positive for the Lions is that they are going to be facing Valley and Riverbank these next 2 weeks. Those are 2 teams that have yet to score a point this season. So even with the loss, I do think that they're well on the way to being a better than 4-win team than they were last year. But they definitely have some things, even with the fatigue factor, they have things they could still clean up for sure. Offensive line, once again, has got to give Larson more time to pass. But at the same time, Larson's got to be a little bit smarter in the pocket. It seemed like almost every play he was trying to scramble out of the pocket and throw on the run. And there were times where he definitely could have thrown in the pocket. Again, it all just comes with experience. There's people of all different classes on that team. You got some juniors, you got some sophomores. But I do think that this Lions team still has potential to be a winning team this year.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I think I actually think it's almost worse when you play a team like that hasn't scored a point yet all season. I mean, I just think my mentality just on Sundays, if like the Raiders are playing a team that's 0-3, 0-4, I'm like, well, we can't be the first team that they beat. So like that's got to be added pressure. Like we can't be the first team they score on.
Right. Well, and then they also they play somebody in between, but I think that they play Forest Hill like either the week after Riverbank or 2 weeks after. And I know that's a team you cover, but I know they haven't won a game yet this year either. So, I mean, they definitely have a chance to really get some wins going, before they get into league and even right when they start getting into, SAC Metro Athletic League play.
Definitely. And I'll touch on Forest Hill here in a second after I talked to their coach on Monday, but for me, Friday was an interesting one. I went to Colfax and Galt. Galt was coming in at 2-0. They beat Highlands and Franklin and Stockton, so not very strong teams, but hey, 2-0 is 2-0. I thought this game was going to be a little closer. I think I picked 31-10, but Colfax dominated from start to finish. They beat Galt 55-13. I actually had 54-13 written down on my score chart, but hey, they scored so much I must have missed a point somewhere because it was 55-13. Math has never been my strong suit, though. That's why I went into writing instead of numbers. But the Falcons ran just 4 plays in the first quarter, and they scored 3 times with them. And they did have actually 4 touchdowns in the first quarter because they also had a 95-yard kickoff return by Cannon Tomlin, who was my athlete of the week last week. He also had a 78-yard touchdown run. I talked to him after the game, and I was like, hey, I just want you to know I can't make you my athlete of the week 2 weeks in a row. So don't be offended that it's not going to be you, but if I could, I would. Just an amazing performance from him. Junior quarterback River Roach, he was a perfect 5 of 5, 156 yards and 3 touchdowns. 2 of those were to Kenny Goal, who had 2 receptions, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. The second touchdown he scored, actually, I believe it was a 56-yard touchdown pass. And it was the 3rd offensive drive of the game because it was touchdown, kickoff, or it was touchdown, kickoff return, and then another touchdown. And on that drive, I actually went to Colfax's coach because it was like an 8-play drive. And I said, hey, not to be a Debbie Downer, but statistically speaking, that was your worst drive of the game. And it still ended in a touchdown. Colfax really just dominated this one. They stopped Galt in its tracks. They forced turnovers when they needed to. The second half kind of got a little bit ugly. I touched on it a little bit. So there was some frustrations boiling over, but Galt had 105 yards worth of unsportsmanlike conduct or personal foul penalties in the second half alone. Its coach was ejected. Initially, he wasn't going to leave. I was told by administrators that the AD was calling law enforcement because the refs were refusing to restart the game till he left. I never saw a police car show up and the coach left, so I can't attest if it actually came. But there was just a lot of late hits, some trash talk, a couple kind of cheap shots a little bit. Even some fans from the Galt stands were kind of spewing some uglies towards Colfax's players. I think it was a lot of frustrations boiling over with how the game went, but it was really rough to see. I mean, you don't like seeing that at all, especially at this level. It's like these are high school kids. So, glad it didn't escalate into anything violent or anything too bad. And like I said, there was a few late hits. I guess cheap hits isn't the best way. There weren't cheap shots. There were just shots after the whistle where they were kind of away from the play. But one thing I will say is Colfax really impressed me with how they handled it, because it's very easy when that's happening to kind of get caught up in that. And Colfax, I believe, had 2 penalties in the second half, and they were both holds. Credit to Jason Stowers, the head coach. He pulled the starters the second things were getting ugly. Didn't want to risk suspensions, injuries, and the players handled themselves very well. Because, like I said, when that's happening to you, it's easy to get kind of sucked into that, and they did a good job not getting sucked into that. I talked to him about it after the game, and he said, our guys know that it's bigger than them. It's a team sport, and to not, feed into that stuff. And that was just really impressive. You don't normally see that from high school kids. And a couple other notable scores in the area. It was a big week for my area teams. Placer ended up going down to Silver Creek in San Jose, a school with 3,500 enrollment size, and they won 45-0. Starters were out midway through the second quarter. It was 42-0. It was a running clock actually before halftime. I don't think I've ever seen that. Just a huge game for the Hillmen. I'll get over some stats over that in a little bit. And then Del Oro scored 13 unanswered to beat Clayton Valley Charter on the road. That was a huge win for the Golden Eagles. I think that's a kind of a statement win. Forest Hill ended up losing to Stone Ridge Christian. That was a rough game. I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. But one thing that I learned, especially from that Del Oro game, I've kind of been in this lull with Del Oro where I think they're a good team. I just think their league is a lot better. And now I'm kind of changing where I stand on that. I don't think Del Oro is, a Folsom or Oak Ridge in that league or even a Granite Bay. But from what I've seen from them so far and the way they went on the road and beat a very good Clayton Valley team, I think Del Oro can compete with anyone. And I think if you catch Del Oro on a bad night, or if you guys have a bad night and you're playing Del Oro, it could be a rough night for you. I think the Golden Eagles are a team that they're probably going to lose a few league games just because of how good that league is. I clearly don't have them going 10-0, but I also think that's a team that, especially now that they can go down the D2 bracket, if you're sitting there in November and you see like a 7 or 8 seed Del Oro that you draw in the playoffs, I got to imagine that that's going to make you feel a little bit uneasy. I think the Golden Eagles are a very good team that also just happens to be in a very hard league. Matt, what are some of the things you learned about the teams in your area this week?
Well, just on your point, any coach in the SFL will tell you if you don't bring your A game in the SFL, you're going to lose. So any team can beat any team. What I learned, Vista again, I like their makeup. I mean, week one they were embarrassed. They didn't play well. They rebounded. They're playing a tough team in Granite Bay, and they left everything out on the field. This team's not going to let teams walk over them. This team's not going to give up. This team's going to play to the end. They're going to play hard, and they're playing because they want to. They're playing hard, and they're playing the whole way because they have goals at the end of the season they want to reach. So this team, don't count them out of any game or any opponent. I just like the way they showed up against Granite Bay, even with one of their top players out, Nasworth, and they still battled the whole game long. Folsom, we talked about it. Austin Mack has a lot of pressure on him as a quarterback, and I really like how he's playing right now. It was only one game, I know, but he still hasn't had an interception yet. He hasn't turned the ball over yet. That's big. So he's making, he's accurate with his passes. He's got things he's got to work on. Coach, he knows it. Coach knows it. But he's playing well, and he's confident. And the players around him are playing well too. And that makes him. Austin told me that makes him feel even more confident that he's got all these guys around him that are playing well. So, and then the Folsom defense, they showed me that they can score some points too, and they're good. Everyone always talks about Folsom offense, but their defense, you can play good football too. That's another thing I learned.
All right, Aaron, what about you? What are some things you learned about a few of your teams this week?
So, like I mentioned earlier, if Lincoln doesn't fix their problems up front, Henning's not going to have an opportunity to be nearly as explosive as he was last season, which is going to create various other offensive problems like we saw on Friday night. And I'll get into the Lincoln-Roseville game in a bit, but, I think it's going to take some time. I think it's going to take some time for them to gain that physicality that is needed. I think they'll have it by league, but I don't know if they're going to have it by this week. Granite Bay, I know Vista put up a heck of a fight, but still, with just how impressive their run game is, they they look like a top 5 team, top 5 offense, at least in the section. I don't know if a top 5 team quite yet, but they're getting there. If their run game can keep this up, they're going to be very tough to stop in the SFL. I'm not going to say yet that I can see them beating a Folsom or an Oak Ridge, because they need to prove that to me before I say that, but I could definitely see them hanging with them for sure. Granite Bay looks like the real deal this year. Interesting fact about Granite Bay, their running backs coach, I believe I have this right, is Ernie Cooper, who was the head coach at Granite Bay when they won the state championship in, I believe, 2012. So he's gotten back with the program, which is cool to see. I know he was, I think, their freshman or JV coach last year, so it's cool to see him come back up to varsity. West Park, they're the real deal, and they're solid on both sides of the ball. They won 50-7 against Pleasant Grove. And again, while Pleasant Grove might not be like the best team in the area, still to see what West Parks are doing their first year as seniors, especially on defense, holding the team to 7 points, it's very impressive to see. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do this week against Tokay. I'm actually going to go to that game on Friday night. Tokay's 3-0, West Park's 2-0, so I'm interested to see if they can hang. And I think they'll be a force in the FVL. I've talked about that a lot. I could see them going 5-0 in non-league competition. This week there will be a challenge, though. Also, the CVC is weaker than I thought. I know that, I'm just shocked about Antelope mainly. I know that's not a team I cover, but they're 0-3. They have Karan Board as one of the best running backs in the area. I don't know if it's a Ryan Henning type situation where teams are just targeting him, which is limiting his production, or if it's a matter of other parts of the team aren't working. But when you have, I thought Bella Vista was going to have, 3 wins all season, and they're tied for the lead right now at 2-1 with Wood Creek, who's 2-1. I would have never guessed that those two teams would be leading the CVC after week 3. I'm interested to see what can happen going forward, but yeah, it's definitely not what I expected.
All right. And I think one thing, and Matt, you can kind of maybe preview this a little bit soon, but there's one team that has really impressed me so far, kind of speaking of the FBL, Aaron, is Placer off to that 3-0 start, but I think this week is by far the toughest test that Placer has had, coming up against Vista Del Lago. I know, Matt, you're going to be at that game. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about what you're expecting from that game?
Well, Placer is predominantly a run team. They run their wing tee, and they're going to bring it they're going to bring their running game to Vista, just like Granite Bay ran against them. They don't run their wing tee, but they're a running team, and they're going to pound it, and Vista's going to have to stop them if they want to win the game. Either stop them or outscore them, one or the other. I'm not too familiar with what Placer has on defense, but if Vista's not going to stop them, they're going to have to score more points than they are. So I think it's going to be a lot like the Granite Bay game, where it's Placer's run game against Vista's pass game. I'm going to give Vista the advantage just because A, they're at home. B, they're coming off a loss against Granite Bay. They're going to be fired up, just like they were against when they lost to Manteca. Vista beat them twice last year, so I'm sure they're going to be feeling confident. I'm predicting a Vista 45-28 victory, but I still think it'll be an entertaining game.
Definitely. Those two schools are very familiar with each other. I think they played 8 times in the last 7 years, and they've split it 4-4. So I don't know if the fans consider a rivalry, but I guarantee you the players and coaches are definitely calling that a rivalry now.
Yeah. And I'll say, like I said about the SFL, if Vista doesn't show up, they could easily lose this game. So, yeah.
And then before we get to players of the week, how about everyone kind of talk to us about where you're going to be? I know, Matt, you already said Thursday night or Friday night, and I think you mentioned you were trying to hit the Oak Ridge game beforehand as well.
Yeah, Oak Ridge is hosting the Honor Bowl. And Honor Bowl, it's like a showcase. They have a doubleheader Friday at their place. They're playing Silverton of Oregon, which won a state title last year in Oregon. And so they're playing at 4:00, right in the heat of the day. So unless something changes between now and then, that game is kicking off at 4. And then Granite Bay plays Spanish Springs from Nevada in the nightcap. So that's honoring first responders, military, that type of thing. So I want to hit that game first, and then head over to the Vista game.
So fun fact, I actually, when I was in high school and Casey Taylor was at DO, I actually played in the Honor Bowl back when it was called Battle for Veterans against Oaks Christian, and they beat us 40-0. It was not fun. But, Aaron, what about you? Where are you going to be this week?
All right, buckle in, everybody, because I am going to be at 4 games this week. Yeah, I'm crazy. I've decided that I'm going to go cover 4 games. So let's strap in here and let's go through each one. So Thursday, I'm going to be at Roseville as the Tigers play Lincoln. This should be a good matchup as both teams need to bounce back. Roseville, I didn't get a chance to talk about them that much. They lost 24-19 against Laguna Creek last week. It wasn't necessarily about the Tigers playing like bad on offense or defense. It just came down to them not taking care of the ball. They had totaled 6 turnovers. I want to say that their quarterback, Brandon Graydon, had 4 of them. He had at least 3 of them. They just need to take care of the football, and I think that they would have won that game. On the flip side, like I said, Lincoln needs to start clicking offensively and get stronger up front. This should be a good one. Lincoln beat them pretty handily last year. Both teams are not the same team. I think this Roseville team's gotten a little bit better. This Lincoln team, at least right now, looks a little bit weaker. I'm going to light a fire under Lincoln, and I'm not going to pick them until they prove to me they can stop the run. I'm going to go Roseville 26, Lincoln 24. Which means that it'll probably be Lincoln 26 and Roseville 24, but we'll see what happens. Friday,
first jinx.
Yeah, exactly. Friday, I'll be at West Park as they face Tokay. DeVell Barksdale has been amazing at quarterback so far this season in his senior year. I expect him to play well once again. Tokay has been led by sophomore TK. I'm going to butcher this name. Kargunis, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He has 5 touchdowns on the season with 101.6 quarterback rating. But the Tigers don't necessarily have a guy who can immediately make an impact in the game. At least it seems like that to me. The Panthers have a plethora of guys that can do that, and they proved that last week with Julian. I'm going to mispronounce his name again. Nulala, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. He had a 99-yard touchdown reception last week. I think this should be the biggest test for West Park thus far this week against Tokay, but I'm still going to go with them, let's say 48-28. All right, now Saturday, I'm covering 2 games. So I'll probably get home from the West Park game Friday night. I don't know, 11:15, 11:30, write the article, go to bed at 1 a.m., wake back up, and I'm going to a 9 a.m. game on Saturday morning as Western Sierra, a small school in the SMAL, is taking on Mira Loma at Mira Loma. Western Sierra got crushed by them 62-6 last year, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be more of the same this year. I do think Wisco will get a win at some point this season, but not this week. They got crushed by Golden Sierra 76-6 last week. I'm going to go Mira Loma 54, Western Sierra 12. Right after that, I'm going to get a little bit of a break to go grab some lunch, and then I'm going to head on over to catch Sierra College's home opener against Fresno City College. The Wolverines lost last week 45-28 against San Mateo, but hung tight until the 4th quarter. San Mateo's historically been a pretty good program. Fresno lost to Diablo Valley last week. I'm going to say the Wolverines take this one in the home opener. Let's go 35-27.
All right, I like it. I'll be at 2 games this week as well. I'm going to start it out with Thursday. Aaron, I'm actually going to be helping you out. I'm going to be at Johansson in 12 Bridges. The Rhinos have been off to a solid start in their first varsity year. They beat a very good El Dorado team last week by 2 scores. I think that was a statement win for them. I think El Dorado is one of those teams that I don't think people realize how good they are quite yet, but I've seen them play in person. That quarterback, Anthony Mahaffey, I believe his name is. He is a stud. That team is very good. And I'm very impressed with 12 Bridges by not only winning that game, but winning it 42-28. Like, they put up points on that team. That was a good defense that I saw when they played against Bear River the week before. They're coached well, as you know, and a lot of Lincoln folks know, have a lot of the former Lincoln Zebra coaching staff that led them to a lot of success. They're led by quarterback Whit Cruz, running back Nathan Crawford. I think Johansson's not really the strongest program. I've got 12 Bridges winning this one, starting out 3-1 their first varsity season. I think I said 12 Bridges 45, Johansson 10. Friday, I'm going to be at Colfax and Nevada Union. This is a very prove-it game for me for Colfax. Not that Nevada Union's a great football program. I mean, that's great. If you had heard this back in the 90s or 2000s, you'd be screaming at me through the screen. But things have changed up there in Grass Valley. But they are a much bigger school and a bigger team size-wise than Colfax, and actually bigger than really anything Colfax has seen yet, except maybe Truckee. But Cannon Tomlin's been a nightmare for defenses in his last 2 contests, and he's just got all the confidence in the world right now. I think he's going to keep his momentum going. Junior quarterback River Roach, he found his stride in that game against Galt with 3 touchdown passes. And I mean, really, if all else fails, Malachi Thompson's been a workhorse for the Falcons. Last week, he had, I believe it was 60 yards on 12 carries or something like that, but that's because the starters were out early in the second half. He had 150 yards rushing earlier in the season. I just think that he can really pound and use defense into submission. I think Colfax has too many weapons for the Miners. And I'm picking Colfax 30, NU 14. And one bonus one I want to give, just because Bill Poindexter, my boss, is going to be covering this one for us, is Forest Hill and Big Valley Christian. 2 teams that are winless. So I talked to Forest Hill's coach yesterday. They're 0-3 right now. They just lost 62-0. And he said one of his players right before the meeting pointed at the scoreboard with everyone else and said, 62-0. Who cares? Let's move on. That game is behind us. And he said that moment, he could see it in his team's eyes that things kind of flipped a switch. Like, they're kind of like, we can't do anything about these games that we've already played, but we can win the games that are in front of us. And, 0-3 is not ideal, but it's also not exactly, a death sentence, especially when league play hasn't started yet. I think they do have some talent on that team. They just haven't gotten things going yet. But Big Valley Christian, they're a decent team, but they're coming in 0-2 also. They have to make a long journey up to Forest Hill. I'm going to pick Forest Hill to win this one, actually, 27-21. And I guess I could say I'm doing that on behalf of Bill Poindexter since I'm previewing the game for him. And a couple of standout players we've had in the area. One that really stood out to me, like I said, I know Cannon Tomlin probably would have been my decision, but he was my athlete of the week last week. But for me, it's going to be Caden Pinnick, Del Oro's quarterback, who for 3 touchdowns and led the comeback in Del Oro's win over Clayton Valley. I think he proved a lot in that game. And Del Oro's been platooning quarterbacks in the first couple games of the season, but I think he kind of earned that starting job with his performance and leading that comeback over a very good Clayton Valley team on the road and a huge win. I mean, by far Del Oro's biggest win of the season. So I'm going to give my hat off to Caden Pinnick. You are the athlete of the week for me this week. A couple other notable performances, like I mentioned, Tomlin, Josh Maxwell for Placer had 122 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Kenny Gull had 127 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. For Colfax, Placer quarterback Josh Craycraft threw for 3 touchdowns. And Del Oro receiver Tommy Poe had 2 touchdown receptions in the win. Matt, were there any performances over where you were at that stood out to you?
Yeah. Now, Carter Jackson's not my player, but I mean, Granite Bay guy. But obviously, he had the game of the week. But Vista again, Matt Long, 9 catches, 190 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, I didn't look it up. He's got to have, I don't know, through 3 games, 8 or 9 receiving touchdowns already. He's been off the charts. Cruz Santero, 4 catches, 140 yards and a touchdown. And on defense, Logan Goldsmith for the Eagles, 20 tackles, 7 solo, 13 assists. He slept good Friday night, or Thursday night, I guess. And then Folsom, Austin Mack again, quarterback, 17 out of 21, 263 and 4. He was my guy for Folsom.
All right. Aaron, what about you?
For the Lincoln area, you mentioned his name, Nathan Crawford, the running back, the junior running back over at 12 Bridges. He went off 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. I actually watched the highlights back, at least of the first half of that game, and he was just so dominant. Early to start the second quarter, he ran for, I believe it was a 64 or a 66-yard score where he literally looked like the Flash out there. It was crazy. So he ran for nearly 1,000 yards on JV last season too. He's a heck of a player for that program, so hats off to him. He's my athlete of the week for Lincoln. For South Placer, we've talked about him already. You guys mentioned him. It's Carter Jackson. How could it not be? I mean, you go off for 300 plus yards on 39 carries, 4 touchdowns. He also caught a touchdown too. He's also currently top 10 in the state in rushing yards with, I think, like 562 or something like that. He's been insanely impressive. And again, this has been with CJ Herring out too. When he comes back, I don't know what they do. They've got so much talent at Granite Bay. But yes, this week it's Carter Jackson. I actually got to chat with him over the phone. He's a very cool kid for a sophomore. He's already got offers from Arizona and Utah too as a sophomore. It's just wild to see. So hats off to him. Some other impressive performances, even though Lincoln lost, Sean Cotton had 11 tackles and a pressure against Casa. He's been solid on the defensive side of the ball for Lincoln so far. He also serves as their punter too. Roseville High, this actually I wanted to get into outside of football for a second. Girls golf, we haven't talked about that yet. I know we talked a little bit about volleyball. We've talked a little bit about cross country, but girls golf, Roseville High freshman Jasmine Hale made a hole-in-one in a match against Del Oro on Wednesday at Indian Creek Country Club on the 111-yard 8th hole. Very impressive. As a person who actually was able to accomplish the same thing in high school when I played, it was really cool to see another person do that as well. So congratulations to her. I'm doing a piece on her this week. For Rockland, back to football, Rockland, Mason Silva, and Elias Brown combined for 175 yards and 4 touchdowns rushing in a win against Capital Christian on Saturday morning. I do think Joey Roberts has still got to play better if that team's, going to keep racking up some wins, but they're going down to Antioch this week, and I expect them to win that game. But yeah, Mason Silva and Elias Brown solid there. I mentioned Julian for West Park, 4 receptions, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that 99-yard touchdown. Those are all the most impressive performances on my end for my area.
All right, I like it. Hole-in-one. I mean, that you can't top that. I mean, I've gotten one in mini golf and I've been elated. So I can imagine getting one in regular golf. And kind of, the heat's really impacting a lot of these outdoor sports. I know I talked to some tennis coaches, cross country. A lot of them said they're canceling meets and matches, or they're moving stuff to the morning, trying to just get out of this triple digit. I'm going to be beating the heat tonight. I'm actually checking out Bear River Volleyball hosting Lyndhurst. They've got a freshman sensation named Eden Chaw alongside her 2 sisters, Audrey and Malin, who are a junior and senior. The Bruins are looking for their 3rd straight win. I caught a few volleyball games last week. Placer beat Colfax 3-0. First 2 sets were 25-23. The student section at Colfax was just unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen that for a weeknight volleyball game ever. I mean, kudos to the, I think they call it the Falcons Nest. Colfax did bounce back the next day to beat Union Mine. They play center tonight in their PBL opener. Then Forest Lake Christian is off to a 3-0 start. They're looking ready to make a run at a 3rd straight section championship game appearance. And maybe the 3rd time will be the charm, and they'll get that coveted blue banner. Matt, I know you kind of mentioned you were wanting to talk about some volleyball. Kind of talk to me a little about the volleyball in your area.
Well, I went to a Folsom game last week against Mira Loma, and Folsom has a new coach this year, Devin Elmore, who came to Folsom from Mira Loma, so that was kind of interesting. But anyway, just briefly talking with him, he's excited about his team. He's got a junior setter, Kelly Wong, and her sister is a freshman libero, Chloe. So she likes the Wong sisters. Other big names for the Bulldogs is the sophomore Maddie Seabury, senior Lila Jarvis, and Grace Gilbranson. So he's high on them this year, and he's looking. He said he's a lot of versatility. All these players can play multiple positions, so he's like pieces in a puzzle. He's going to experiment, move around when he needs to, and that versatility is always a good thing for a coach to have. So he's excited about his team. And then Oak Ridge, I haven't seen them play yet, but I talked to Coach Trevin Morgan. This team's 8-0. They just last year they came a win away from going to the state championship game. Very deep again this year. Abby Hoiberg, Maddie Walker, Emily Child, Elle Weaver, Max Dawden, Kate Fagundes, Avery Town returning. They have tons of depth. This team, you're going to be hearing about them a lot in the postseason. So I'll leave it at that for right now.
All right. And Aaron, I know you've got some very good volleyball teams over in your area. You've got Rockland, Whitney, who are very strong. Lincoln's coming off a strong year. Del Oro's looking pretty good. Have you gotten a chance to check out any of them yet, or did you see anything new from them last week?
Yeah, well, so I talked a lot about, volleyball last week, but even after we did the show last week, I still saw 2 other games. Before I get into those, though, I wanted to say Morgan Collier, who graduated from Lincoln last year, now playing up at University of Oregon, 2 times in 3 weeks, she has been the Pac-12 Freshman of the Week. She has been helping lead that Ducks team. I want to say they're ranked 16th or 17th in the nation right now, one of the top 3 teams in the Pac-12. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on them and seeing how they play this season. I expect them to be very good. So I got to go see last Tuesday. I went to the Ponderosa Rockland game. It's going to be a battle in the SFL between Oak Ridge, Rockland, and Whitney. I think those three teams. I'd argue those three teams are the best teams in the section right now, and they're proving it. Rockland was led by Alexa Watts and Avery Gottschalk. They've been led by those two seniors all year. Avery's already got, she's accepted an offer to go to Northern Arizona University. So she's going to be going there. And yeah, they played very well in a 3-set win on Tuesday night. I talked to Coach Dave Muscarella after the game, and he's very happy with what he's seen out of that team, feeling like they've got more leadership this year than they did last season. So that's a team to watch going forward. I went to go see Wood Creek play Del Campo Wednesday night, and Wood Creek got it done. They kind of choked the first set away, and then they won 3 straight, winning in 4 sets. They're definitely hurting because they don't have the senior leadership they did last year of Caitlin Beck and Amelia Haywood, but I think that's still a decent team. I think they'll be competitive in the CVC. I'm interested to see how they match up against Roseville this year, who's growing to be a better team as most of them are now juniors. There was a lot of sophomores last year. So yeah, those are definitely some good teams in the area. I'm definitely going to try to make my way out to a Rockland Whitney game, whether it's at Rockland or Whitney, because I think that's a heck of a matchup.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we have a plenty of good volleyball teams in the area out here. And we've got some good other sports going on. You know, they might be taking a break this week with the triple-digit temperatures, but you know, some solid tennis, solid golf. We're looking forward to hitting them in some future episodes. But is there anything else you guys would like to add before we wrap this one up?
I just want to say once again, you know, the heat played a factor last week. It's going to play more of a factor this week. We talked about it a little bit. I've talked to some people too. Me and Jordan, I know we're doing a piece on it, and we have tennis coaches. I've had a tennis coach say that they're moving their practices indoors, which is interesting. Cross country, they're trying to modify routes to stay in the shade or find routes that have, water to keep them hydrated. Because that's the number one most important thing right now is I can't advertise this enough right here. Please drink a lot of water if you're athletes out there, because it's going to be a hot week. I know some football practices, they've had to go without pads. I'm not sure if any have gone without helmets yet, but yeah, it's going to be a hot one out there this week. So definitely stay hydrated if you're listening to this.
All right. Awesome. Matt, what about you?
Hey, big fan of Vista Del Lago, Kyle Landis. Their football team practices every morning at 5:45. So they beat the heat that way. So they're probably the smartest group out there. So, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around a 16-man varsity football team too. I don't know how that works, but.
Well, they had like 21 or 22 on the roster, but only 16 in pads. One person looked like they were injured, and then some people may have just not been there.
But are the teams they're playing, are they similar in size? Or
you're going to have anywhere between probably like 18 to 25-man rosters in D7. So, yeah, I mean, even Johnson, they only had 22 or 23 guys on the roster. They're actually slated as a D1 team on Max Preps, which was really surprising to me because I didn't think that they were a D1 team. But, yeah, you're going to have teams in the league they play that are going to be roughly that size. Jordan, I'm not sure how much Forest Hill has.
Forest Hill had a 30 when I was at practice, and that is by far the biggest team they've ever had come out. But Forest Hill also doesn't have a JV program. So if you're playing football in that school, you're on varsity. So that's 30 kids from freshmen to seniors. But at the same time, enrollment size of I think it's like 196. That's pretty good turnout.
Yeah.
So. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I've been Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
Thank you for joining us.